Chapter 1, Section 1, Evaluating Expressions. The first thing that we had talked about on the first day of school was we talked about variables, if you remember right. A variable is a letter that is used to represent a number. Two things that you need to remember about variables is the first one is in order to combine two variables together is that you have to have exact variables. You can't say x plus y and combine those two, okay? Each variable stands for an independent number, okay? So basically, again, a variable is a letter that actually represents a number. Then you have what we call the algebraic expression, okay? Algebraic expression is an expression that includes at least one variable, okay? So understanding that, we're going to take a look down here, and I'm going to give you some examples, okay? Variables. A variable is anything that is a letter. I apologize about the shadow. This is the first time I'm doing this on this paper. So if you look, variables. A variable can be the letter X, it can be Y, it can be S, it can be T. It doesn't really matter what it is. Then variables can also come in different ways. Just because I write something like this, 2x, that does not mean that that's not a variable. With that being done that way, that is a variable right there. All that is saying is that is 2 times x, okay? Algebraic expressions are those expressions that contain at least one particular variable. Some examples of this could be written like 5n, which, like I said a few seconds ago, 5n is 5 times n. You can also write that one 5 times n. Notice that we're using the dot. Okay, we do not use the multiplication sign anymore in algebra because it gets confused with an x. And then you also have 5 times n that could be written this way. Okay, so those are all different types of algebraic expressions. You can have all types of them. You can have 14 divided by y. You can also have 14 divided by y. Yes, a fraction is an algebraic expression. Anytime that you have a number under the other number, it's a division sign. Also, some more algebraic expressions that you can actually have is something like 6 plus c, which is an algebraic expression, and a minus x. Okay? When you are actually doing these types of problems, there's different ways that they'll ask you to do this. For example, number one, they want you to evaluate the expression 13 times n when n is 3. Key thing is to look at your instructions. Evaluate the expression when x is 3. So what I have here is I have 13 times, they told me n right here was 3, so I'm going to fill that n with a 3. And it's a good idea to put the brackets around it so you know that's what you're replacing. And then what I'm going to do is 13 times 3 would be 39. Number 2, it's a division. So basically what it's asking me to do is evaluate this particular one. So what I'm going to do is say, okay, 9 divided by, we already identified n as 3. So what we're going to do at this particular time is put that as a 3. So now what I have, even though that it looks like a fraction problem, is I have 9 divided by 3, which will give me an answer of 3. Number 3, same situation, fill in. We have n, so we're going to replace it with a 3 minus 1. So 3 minus 1 would be 2. And then the last one, number 4, what we have there is 3 plus 8, okay, which is 11. The next thing we're going to cover here is what they call writing powers as a product. Anytime you see this, you are going to write it as a product. If you don't know what product means, it means multiplication. So with that particular thought in mind, they don't want you to solve this, they want you to write it as a product. So what you have on number 1 is a power 7 to 1. So to write this as a product, all I have is a 7. Yes, that is your answer. Number 2, it says I have 5 squared. So to write this as a product, I'm going to say 5 times 5. Again, they want it as a product. They do not want you to evaluate. If it says evaluate or solve, you are going to solve it. Number 3, you have a half to the third. So what I'm going to say is a half times a half times a half. That's it written in our product. And last, number 4, is you have z to the 5th. So to write it as a product, I'm going to say z times z times z times z times z. Okay? The last thing that you'll need to know in this chapter is self-explanatory. They want you to actually evaluate now. So if you look at the directions, it says to evaluate the expression. So number 1, it says x to the 3rd power when x is equal to 4. So how am I going to evaluate this? I'm going to take the 4, put it in parentheses, and it's going to be cubed. So now I'm going to say 4 times, I'm writing it as a product, 4 times 4. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to say 4 times 4, which is 16, and 16 times 4, which is 64. So that would be your first answer. Looking over here at number 2, what you have is d to the 4th. Yes, it's a fraction. I know everybody's like freaking out right now, but it's not that hard. Again, I'm going to write it 1/3 to the 4th power. So what I have here is 1/3 times 1/3 times 1/3 times 1/3. So if you remember multiplying fractions, all you do is go across and multiply. 1 times 1 times 1 times 1 is 1. Then I have 3 times 3, which is 9. 9 times 3, which is 27. And 27 times 3 would be, let me see here, 27 times 3, that's 21, carry a 2, 3, 6, 8. So your answer here would be 1/81. That is in a nutshell for Chapter 1, Section 1. Understanding how to evaluate expressions and also how to work powers. If there's any questions on this, feel free to ask me in class. Good luck and have a great evening.